It's a nonprofit research institute called the Institute of Better Intentions. So I will be brief. And first thing, we don't know what the hell this is, right? But we know it does have two parts. You have an internal reality, your thoughts, right? So you close your eyes and you hold the image of a candle flickering. That's your own private cognitive world. Your internal, which is called thoughts. Then we have our external reality. So you open your eyes, you hear me rap on this little whiteboard thing. That's your events. Now everything that Bethany has been talking about is summarized in a hypothesis called the phase lock hypothesis. And in the 1960s, scientist named Thomas Kuhn wrote a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And he coined the term paradigm, which is a structured set of assumptions. It's like looking at the world through a pair of sunglasses. Okay? And a paradigm shift is dramatically taking off the sunglasses and putting on a brand new sunglasses. Suddenly the world looks completely different. You look at the world through a gray pair of sunglasses, the world is gray. You look at the world through a rosy pair of sunglasses, the world is rosy. Which is which? Neither. Okay? It's your set of assumptions that determines your worldview. Now, in the book, he talks about Copernicus. Before Copernicus, we assumed that the Earth was the center of the universe. Now, suddenly, we're not. You know? And it's an either-or deal. It's not like we're the center of the universe, a little bit less the center, a little bit less the center. No, one way or the other. It's a quantum jump. The quantum jump in physics is when an electron goes from one orbital shell to the next orbital shell. It doesn't travel through space to get there. It just appears. Okay. And then he talks about Darwin. Before Darwin, we assumed creationism. Now we know it's evolution. Before Einstein, we assumed that if Bethany has a watch and I have a watch, she's my accountability partner. She makes sure my monkey mind is focused. And I send Bethany whipping around the Earth in a rocket ship, come back, we would have the same time. No. The faster you move, the slower time goes. My dad was a pilot in the Air Force. He told me you always have to recalibrate the clocks on a jet. Because when you're moving fast, time slows down, period. It's relative. Okay. The book that she talked about, in fact, I'm going to write. She had mentioned ions. Bethany and I gave a joint presentation at the Northeast Regional Conference a couple of years ago in October. And I was asked to be the keynote speaker to talk about this phase lock hypothesis, which is all about intention. And so it was filmed, and it's on YouTube. So if you just look up the primacy model of consciousness, you can see my presentation where I walk through a paradigm shift about our internal reality, a paradigm shift about our external reality. This one was developed by my mentor. It's called Galileo theory. I don't know if you ever heard the term entanglement, but you were talking about the Unity Church saying that we're all one. Okay? I don't know if you ever saw Tom Hanks in the Da Vinci Code or Angels and Demons.
Yes.
The female protagonist in Angels and Demons was an entanglement physicist. What they did is they took two subatomic particles that had the same spin, separated them in space, they changed the spin of one, the other one changed simultaneously. That can't happen according to our old assumptions. It would take time before that information got to that particle. The fact that they're connected yet still separate, it's kind of like imagine being in a room and you look at two TV screens and there's a fish and a fishbowl going this way, a fish and a fishbowl going this way. Every time this fish turns, it turns the other way. They look like they're separate yet connected. Unbeknownst to you, in the three-dimensional room next door, it's just one fish in a fishbowl, two different camera angles. So at our level of perception, what's called the explicate order, there's you're over there and I'm over here. Okay? And it takes time before information gets to you. But at the implicate order, or the primary level of reality, it's all fundamentally, it's called undivided wholeness. We're all fundamentally part of the same unity. Which is why it's cool to be here presenting in front of the Unity Church. So that's called holographic model. The assumption that Galileo theory challenges is that social science are like the wussies of the scientific community. We've never been able to explain, predict, and control human behavior. Well, that's because the way we measured it as social scientists is dumb. You've all seen those scales, do you strongly agree, neutral. It's called Likert scales. That's like saying, is this screen very long? Is it neither long nor short? Is it very short? Well, compared to what? Length of an ant? It's pretty long. Size of a football field? Pretty short. So instead of using categorical, Joe Wolfel, my mentor, said, Galileo, it's an homage to Galileo because he was the first person to describe motion in terms of mathematics. He says, let's use comparative logic. If we want to find out about what people think about politics, you find out what concepts they use. You just do an open-ended survey. And then from that list of 15 or 20, you pick a mental ruler. Right? So you pick not liberal and conservative because they're opposites. You wouldn't pick liberal and environment because they're close. So you pick something like liberal and moderate, and you assign a distance. So you say, liberal and moderate is 100 units. That means nothing in and of itself. But if I said to you, if liberal and moderate is 100 units, how far is Rush Limbaugh from liberal? All right. Well, in my mind, 10,000 units. People are able to make estimates of how dissimilar a pair of concepts if you give them a mental ruler to compare it to. So what you do is you get a map of what people think. Any marketing campaign is an attempt to move your product, or in case of politics, your candidate, here closer to the average self-concept. If you associate it with this concept here, leadership, and this concept here, economic policy, you can think of these as like marbles in a bowl of Jell-O. Okay? And this self-concept, the center tinker toy from which you build out all other conceptual relationships. So we have this map of how people perceive the concepts and how similar, the closer in meaning, the closer they are in space, farther away in meaning, farther away in space. Before Galileo theory, every marketing or advertising campaign used what was called the forehead method. Right? You have to come up with a message strategy. You take your hand, you put it on your forehead, and you say, geez, I hope this works. In other words, you have no clue what the effects of that message are going to be. You hope it's clever and it catches on, right? But unless you make maps, you're not going to know what's the effect of any message. Here, if I know that I say candidate X has got a strong leadership qualities, now it moves in the direction. If I say candidate X's leadership has brought her economic position back up to par, they move towards the center of their configuration. So this goes here, this goes here, and bingo, you know exactly what to say in any campaign. It's using Newtonian mechanics, communications of force. If I say A is B, I'm trying to move those marbles closer. If I say your mom's a communist, well, that's a pretty big marble in your space. You have a lot. It's going to be hard to move that. All right? Concepts have mass proportional to the amount of information. And acceleration, so Newtonian mechanics, now dumped in our brains. So we've got this idea that these marbles, all right, are moving around. Anything that has mass, you guys have all heard of electron microscopes, right? That's because electrons, which are little tiny particles of matter, they also diffract. That's how we get it. So anything that has mass also has frequency. So what I did in my dissertation was to make the first motion pictures of thought. And indeed, these concepts are oscillating. So you can actually figure out not only what to say in a message, you can figure out when to say it. So pushing a kid on a swing set. When do you whack the marble? When it's going in that direction. So you can figure out what to say, when to say it. So now, I can't predict exactly what Bethany's going to do next, but if I make measurements of a large population, I can know the effects of the message. So Joe's cracked the case on persuasion. What it means that our internal reality is a frequency interference pattern. Holographic theory says there's two levels of reality, primary and secondary, the implicate and the explicate. And that the implicate order is the domain of all frequencies. It's like a radio station playing all possible stations. But we're only tuned into one station at a time. Right? Our secondary reality is a four-dimensional hologram. In other words, it's one set of frequencies and the Galileo holographic model, or the phase lock hypothesis, is just saying what Christian Huygens, the guy who developed the first pendulum, discovered, pendulum clock. After a while, all the pendulums were locked in phase. Right? Women know this intuitively. You live in the same house, their cycles will start to match. You look at a bunch of fireflies flashing off in a bush, they get entrained. Right? A man and a woman living together for 50 years start to look like each other and the dog. Right? Systems get coherent the more they interact. So this principle of rhythm entrainment is nothing more than what we're studying with the intention experiment. All right? Your thoughts as a wave pattern, your events as a wave pattern should be phase locked. Okay? And this Galileo holographic model, or the phase lock hypothesis, is saying nothing more than what you've always heard growing up. You reap what you sow, what goes around comes around. What you assume becomes manifest. All right? There's some type of karma, balance, justice. All right? Newton's law, for every action there's an opposite and equal reaction. Even the Beatles said it. And in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. Okay? All of these phrases is saying that your thoughts and events form a phase lock system. So you better be gosh damn certain that you're controlling your thinking, because what happens to you is reflected by that. We're trying to show you the science behind that. Whether you look at it, I did experiments when I was at UC Davis in California. We had a control group that would keep track of some random countable event, like how much junk mail you got for a month. If someone calls you up on your phone, all right, it was the wrong number. That's a countable event. We told the control group to actively look for coins, but the treatment group would visualize getting more junk mail or more wrong numbers or finding more coins. And then you compare the groups and you see how likely a difference would happen by chance. Again, science, you can't prove causality. You just show that as one variable changes, another variable changes. So the people that visualize getting more of those events, there's such a large difference. And again, these were replicated. You'll never do just one experiment. They were replicated at the University of Pennsylvania by a colleague of mine. They all range between 0.02 and 0.006. In other words, we get the same data, and the odds of it happening by chance, you need to have at least 0.05 or smaller. You need to be 95% sure that A affects B. So we got beyond significance. Again, I was a young kid out of grad school when these were done, and I went to Charles Tart, who introduced me to Jessica Utz, which is another long story, but I got it bolt. Anyway, he said, this is amazing, and no one's going to believe you, because people are so used to looking through the world through their own pair of sunglasses. They're coming along and trying to establish a science. But one of the cool things about paradigm shift that Kuhn talks about, right, there's always an emotional reaction people don't like having. Galileo, who developed the cool telescope to prove Copernicus was right, they threw the guy in jail, or house arrest, for the rest of his life. Okay? I don't know if you ever heard of the Stokes monkey trial. The guy got arrested for teaching evolution back in the 1920s in the Bible Belt. All right? There's always an emotional reaction. I mean, if you were a physicist in 1905 and some 25-year-old patent clerk walks into your office and says, hey, we have to rewrite the book. Newton was wrong. Space-time is relative. Oh, come in, Albert. Would you like a cup of tea? How about a donut? No, they were pissed. Okay? So what Bethany's trying to do is trying to rip people's sunglasses off, and this is going to be the resistance. But the data caves in. Now nobody believes that the Earth is the center of the universe. I don't care if you're a member of the Flat Earth Society. It ain't so. Right? So we're trying to show that your thoughts and events are phase locked. And that the intention experiment talks about this. Bill Tiller, who's a colleague of mine, he was at Stanford. He was looking at micro-level events. He had people visualize raising or lowering the pH of the sample of water. And they were able to do it by full unit. So we had micro-level events, micro-level events. Now McTaggart's come along and says, let's find out if we can change the nature of the world around us. So we figured, why don't we start here in Albany? We have access to the crime stats. Right. So that's where we're at. But check out the primacy model of consciousness on YouTube if you want to hear the entire presentation. Because basically what it says, if you reap what you sow, what goes around comes around, then right now science assumes that consciousness is locked inside your brain. Life's a bitch and you die. You hear it by accident and you're going nowhere. What if that's not the case? What if there is evolution of consciousness? That's what the primacy model is about. The Galileo holographic model, or the phase lock hypothesis, is a scientific basis for all of Bethany's and our intention experiment stuff. But what you need to do is understand that there's a lot of scientists out there looking at this stuff. So this is becoming legit. The data is going to increase to the point where it's going to overwhelm the old paradigm. So.
But we need your help, right?
Yes.
And as I say, this is research that needs to be done by the people for the people. Okay, because really, we need to kind of want it. We need to kind of call it forth. Okay, and I feel like
some of your flyers.
Sure, that would be great. That would be great.
Some copies.
That'd be great, Melissa. I appreciate it. I'm going to send this around. If you want me to kind of put your name on the list, we kind of have two different lists, but I put you on the constant contact list, and then, are you all done? I'm sorry.
Yeah, guys, I just want to say thanks and good luck, and
Thank you.
contact me if you have any questions. And check out YouTube, and there's also a link to my book through.
And most people don't know, Dr.